12 ways to kill in the 41st millennium. From a weapon, the community calls a flashlight to a weapon that murders planets. The Imperium, the Aeldari, the Necrons, the Orcs, and the forces of chaos Astartes each have their own methods of ending life, and every one of them reflects the species that built it. Here is every weapon type in Warhammer 40K explained. Let's break this down. Lost weapons. The lasgun is the most common weapon in the Imperium of Man. It is the standard issue armament of every Astra Militarum trooper across every regiment on every world, in every war zone the Imperium has ever fought in. There are more lasguns in the galaxy than there are people on most planets. The community calls it a flashlight, and the nickname is not entirely unfair. A single lasgun shot against a Space Marine ceramide armor does approximately nothing. The beam dissipates against the plate. The Marine does not flinch. A single guardsman with a lasgun against a Chaos Space Marine is not a combatant. He is a target with a light attach. But the lasgun was never designed to be fired once by one person. It was designed to be fired 10 million times by 10 million people simultaneously. The lasgun's engineering genius is not its damage output, it is its logistics. The weapon is powered by a rechargeable power pack that can be restored by leaving it in direct sunlight. It has almost no moving parts. It does not jam in mud, sand, ice, or toxic atmosphere. It can be manufactured on any world with basic industrial capacity. It can be issued to a conscript with 6 hours of training, and that conscript can operate it under fire without the weapon failing. The lasgun is the galaxy's most democratic weapon, cheap, reliable, and effective only in the hands of an institution willing to spend soldiers by the million. The Lost family extends upward from the standard lasgun through the long-lace sniper variant, the hotshot lasgun used by Tempestus Scions with higher-powered but shorter-lived power packs, the multi-laser mounted on vehicles, the Lasgun that serves as the Imperium's primary anti-armor infantry weapon capable of punching through the Land Raider plate, and the Volcano Lance mounted on Titans that fires a beam capable of cutting a Warlord-class war engine in half. The lasgun is a flashlight. The Volcano Lance is a directed energy weapon that can level a city block. They operate on the same technology. The difference is scale. Subscribe and tell us in the comments which weapon type you think is the most iconic. Let us keep going. Bolt weapons. The signature weapon of the Adeptus Astartes and the single most iconic firearm in science fiction wargaming, the bolter is not a gun in the conventional sense. It is a .75 caliber gyrojet weapon that fires self-propelled mass-reactive rounds. Each bolt is a miniature rocket that ignites after leaving the barrel, accelerates to penetration velocity, punches through the target's armor, and then detonates inside the body. The round does not just wound, it enters the target and explodes. Against an unarmored human, a single bolt round produces a kill that the lore describes with a clinical brutality. The projectile penetrates the torso, the mass-reactive fuse detects that it has entered soft tissue, and the warhead detonates, turning the internal cavity into a crater. The Imperium issues bolters to Space Marines, Sisters of Battle, Inquisitors, and select Astra Militarum officers. The bolt family spans the bolt pistol for close-quarter sidearm use, the standard bolt gun for infantry, the storm bolter that fires 2 rounds simultaneously, the heavy bolter that serves as a suppressive fire platform capable of chewing through light armor, the assault cannon that spins multiple barrels and produces a volume of fire designed to saturate a kill zone, and the Vulcan Mega Bolter mounted on Titans that fires explosive rounds the size of a human arm. Kraken rounds have elongated penetrators for additional armor piercing. Hellfire rounds contain mutagenic acid designed specifically for tyrannid organisms. Vengeance rounds carry unstable plasma cores that sacrifice the weapon's reliability for additional damage. The bolter is the franchise's central weapon because it reflects the Imperium's central philosophy. Overwhelming force delivered without subtlety, designed to destroy the target so completely that precision becomes irrelevant. Flame weapons. The oldest answer to the oldest question. How do you kill something when you do not know what it is? Fire. The Imperium's flame weapons operate on promethium, a catch-all term for the volatile chemical fuel that the Adeptus Mechanicus produces in quantities measured by the planetary tank load. The standard flamer projects a stream of ignited promethium that adheres to surfaces and continues burning after the initial stream ends. The weapon does not require accuracy, it requires proximity. Point the flamer in the general direction of the enemy and pull the trigger, and everything in the cone of effect is coated in a substance that burns hot enough to melt flesh from bone and does not stop burning until the fuel is exhausted. The heavy flamer extends the range and volume. The Inferno cannon, mounted on Ball Predator tanks, can drench an entire infantry formation in burning promethium from vehicle range. The hand flamer is a pistol-sized variant that Sisters of Battle and Inquisitors carry for close-quarters purification work. Flame weapons are the Imperium's prescribed response to 4 specific categories of threat: tyrannid organisms that regenerate from conventional damage, demonic entities that resist physical ammunition, heretical populations that must be purged rather than engaged, and orc infestations that require the spores to be burned out of the ground to prevent regrowth. The flamer is not a sophisticated weapon, it does not penetrate armor, it does not operate at range, it does not require technical knowledge, it requires a willingness to stand close enough to your target that you can smell them burning. And the Imperium has never had a shortage of soldiers willing to do that. Melt-a-weapons. When nothing else works, you bring the weapon that turns solid matter into liquid. Melt-a-weapons operate through subatomic agitation. The weapon projects a beam of focused thermal energy that vibrates the target's molecular structure so violently that atomic bonds break and solid material transitions directly to a molten state. Against infantry, a melt-a-weapon does not leave a body. It leaves a shadow on the wall behind where the body used to be. Against armor, a melt-a-gun turns ceramite, adamantium, and plasteel into running slag. Against vehicles, a point-blank melt-a-shot opens a tank like a blowtorch through a tin can. The Melta family includes the Melta-gun for standard infantry anti-armor work, the Multi-Melta for vehicle-mounted or heavy weapons team deployment, the Inferno pistol for close quarters used by assault troops, and the Melta-bomb, a directed charge explosive that is clamped onto a target's hull and detonated, producing a thermal lance effect that bores through the thickest armor in the game. Melt-a-weapons have one critical limitation: range. The thermal beam dissipates rapidly across distance, and the weapon's effectiveness increases dramatically at close range, where the target's molecular structure has less time to redistribute the thermal energy before the bonds fail completely. This means that the optimal deployment of a melt-a-weapon requires the wielder to close to within meters of a target that is usually a heavily armored vehicle or a Chaos War engine that can kill the approaching Marine long before they reach effective range. The Melta is the franchise's risk-reward weapon. The payoff is a guaranteed kill against anything in the game. The cost is getting close enough to deliver it. Plasma weapons. A miniature sun fired from a gun at the cost of potentially killing the person holding the gun. Plasma weapons generate and project superheated hydrogen plasma contained within a magnetic envelope that holds the charge together until it impacts the target, at which point the envelope collapses and the plasma detonates with a thermal output that rivals a Melta at medium range while retaining effectiveness against both infantry and armor. The plasma pistol, plasma gun, and plasma cannon form the standard family. The technology is extraordinarily powerful and extraordinarily unstable. Plasma weapons overheat. When a plasma weapon is fired at maximum output, the containment field that holds the superheated charge inside the weapon's barrel can fail. If it fails, the plasma vents inside the weapon rather than out of it. The wielder is hit with the same thermal output they intended for the enemy, which is typically fatal. On the tabletop, overcharged plasma shots have historically carried a rule that the weapon kills its user on a roll of 1. The mechanic has defined the community's relationship with the weapon for decades. Plasma is the gun that asks you whether you want to kill the thing in front of you badly enough to risk dying in the attempt. The answer in competitive play has varied by edition, but the community's cultural relationship with plasma is permanent. It is the weapon you bring when the target absolutely must die, and you have made peace with the possibility that you will die at the same time. Chain weapons. Motorized teeth on a blade. The chainsword is the franchise's most visceral melee weapon, a sword-length weapon with a single-edged or double-edged blade lined with diamond-tipped or adamantium teeth that rotate at high speed along a motorized track, chewing through armor, bone, and flesh, with a sound that the lore describes as a scream of grinding metal, mixed with the wet sound of material being torn apart rather than cut. The chainsword does not slice cleanly. It rips. It chews. It shreds. The wound it leaves is not a cut, but a channel of pulverized tissue that bleeds from 1,000 micro-lacerations simultaneously. The chainsword is the standard melee weapon of the Adeptus Astartes, and the weapon most commonly associated with Space Marine close combat. The chain family extends upward through the chain axe, favored by World Eater's Berserkers and Space Wolves' Bloodclaws, the Eviscerator wielded by Sisters Repentia and Ecclesiarchy, Zealots, a two-handed chainsword the size of a human body that requires superhuman strength or fanatical devotion to swing effectively, and the Chain Fist, a power fist modification that adds a chainsword blade to the fist's striking surface, allowing the wearer to punch through a bulkhead and then saw through whatever is behind it. The chain weapon occupies a unique space in the franchise's weapons philosophy because it is deliberately primitive. Bolt weapons are sophisticated. Plasma weapons are advanced. Chain weapons are a motor attached to teeth mounted on a handle, and the fact that they remain standard issue in a galaxy that possesses power, swords, force weapons, and directed energy technology is the franchise's statement about what kind of warfare the Imperium expects its soldiers to survive. Power weapons. An energy field generated around a blade that disrupts molecular bonds on contact. A power weapon does not cut through armor the way a conventional blade does. It does not rely on edge sharpness or striking force. The energy field does the work. When the blade meets a surface, the disruption field destabilizes the molecular structure of whatever it touches, allowing the weapon to pass through materials that would stop any conventional blade cold. Ceramite, plasteel, adamantium, flesh, bone. The power weapon does not distinguish between them. The disruption field treats all matter equally. The power sword is the most common variant, a single-edged or double-edged blade carried by officers, champions, and elite warriors across the Imperium. Power axes deliver more force per strike at the cost of speed. Power mauls are blunt instruments whose disruption fields are tuned to shatter rather than cut, delivering concussive force that overwhelms armor through shock rather than penetration. The Power Fist is a massive armored gauntlet whose disruption field is concentrated across the striking surface, allowing the wearer to punch through tank armor. The Thunder Hammer is the power weapon family's apex predator, a massive two-handed weapon whose disruption field detonates on impact, producing a shockwave that damages everything in the vicinity of the strike. A Thunder Hammer does not just kill the target, it kills the area around the target. The Lightning Claw is a glove-mounted set of blades, typically 3 or 4, whose individual disruption fields allow the wearer to rake through armor in sweeping motions that shred rather than pierce. Power weapons are the Imperium's statement that even in a galaxy of directed energy, weapons, and miniature rocket launchers, the sword has not been made obsolete. It has been made better. Force weapons. A Psyker's Blade. A weapon that channels the wielder's connection to the warp through its physical structure, producing effects that no conventional technology can replicate. A force weapon looks like a power weapon, a sword, a staff, a halberd, an axe, but its function transcends the physical. When a psyker strikes with a force weapon, they push their psychic energy through the blade and into the target. The weapon does not just wound the body, it attacks the soul. The psychic charge delivered through the strike disrupts the target's neural function, overwhelms their consciousness, and in many cases extinguishes their life force entirely, killing them in a way that leaves the body intact but the mind annihilated. Against demons, force weapons are one of the few reliable tools available. A demon's physical form is a projection of its warp essence. Destroying the body does not kill the demon, it merely banishes it temporarily. A force weapon attacks the warp essence directly, dealing damage that the demon cannot easily recover from. The Grey Knights, the Imperium's dedicated anti-demon strike force, equip every member of their order with a Nemesis force weapon, halberds, swords, hammers, and falchions, each one a psychically attuned instrument designed to channel the wielder's considerable mental power into every strike. Librarians across all Space Marine chapters carry force weapons as their primary armament, and the Inquisition issues them to Psyker operatives who require a weapon that works on both the material and immaterial planes simultaneously. A force weapon in the hands of a weak Psyker is a slightly unusual sword. A force weapon in the hands of a powerful Psyker is a weapon that ends lives by thinking about it. Gauss, weapons. Necron technology does not destroy matter, it unmakes it. Gauss weapons project a directed energy beam that strips the target's molecular structure apart one atomic layer at a time. The victim does not explode. They do not burn. They are disassembled. A Necron warrior's Gauss flare fires a beam of green energy that peels the target's outermost layer of matter away, then the next layer, then the next, stripping flesh, armor, bone, and equipment apart in a process that takes seconds and leaves nothing behind except a faint green residue where a living being used to stand. The technology is 60 million years old. It predates every weapon system any other species in the galaxy possesses by a margin so vast that comparison is meaningless. The Gauss family includes the standard Gauss flare for infantry, the Gauss blaster, carried by immortals for increased range and output, the Gauss cannon, mounted on heavier platforms, and the heavy Gauss cannon that serves as the Necron equivalent of an anti-vehicle weapon and can strip a Land Raider's armor to nothing in sustained fire. The Tesla family operates on related principles. Tesla weapons fire arcs of electrical energy that leap between targets, striking multiple enemies with a single discharge, with this probability of additional arcs increasing as more targets present themselves. The Doomsday Cannon, mounted on the Doomsday Arc, fires a concentrated Gauss beam capable of annihilating super heavy vehicles in a single shot. Necron weapons do not care what they are pointed at. They strip matter apart at the atomic level. The target's composition is irrelevant because every material in the universe is made of atoms, and Gauss technology disassembles atoms. Shuriken weapons. The Aeldari do not use bullets, they use razor discs. A Shuriken weapon contains a solid core of psychoplastic material that the weapon's firing mechanism shaves into molecule-thin discs and accelerates to hypersonic velocity through a linear magnetic field. Each disc is a monomolecular blade, a projectile so thin that its edge is measured in atoms capable of slicing through armor, flesh, and bone with an efficiency that makes the wound appear surgical until the second disc arrives, and the third and the 100th. A Shuriken catapult, the standard Aeldari infantry weapon, fires approximately 100 discs per second. The sound is a sustained whisper rather than the percussive boom of a bolter or the crack of a lasgun. The effect is a storm of razor-thin projectiles that shred a target's surface layer faster than any biological organism can regenerate and faster than most armor can absorb. The Shuriken pistol is the sidearm variant. The Avenger Shuriken catapult, carried by dire Avengers, is the heavier infantry version with increased range and rate of fire. The Shuriken cannon is the heavy weapons variant mounted on vehicles and war walkers, capable of producing a volume of monomolecular fire that can strip a light vehicle's armor in seconds. The Aeldari weapons philosophy is the inverse of the Imperium's. Where the Imperium builds weapons that hit hard enough to overwhelm through force, the Aeldari build weapons that cut so precisely that force becomes unnecessary. A Shuriken does not need to hit hard, it needs to hit thin, and a disc measured in molecules is as thin as physics allows. Demon weapons. A blade with a mind that hates you. Demon weapons are melee armaments that contain a bound demonic entity, a fragment of the warp sealed inside the weapon's structure through sorcery, ritual, or bargain. The demon is not a power source. It is a prisoner, and its rage at being imprisoned is what gives the weapon its power. A demon weapon strikes with force that transcends the physical. The demon's fury adds psychic energy to every blow, allowing the blade to cut through materials that would resist a conventional power weapon and inflict wounds that fester with warp corruption. Drakenyin, wielded by Abaddon the Despoiler, is the most famous demon weapon in the franchise. A sword containing the echo of the first murder ever committed by one human against another. A demon so ancient that it predates the Chaos Gods themselves. The weapon writhes in Abaddon's grip, its blade shifting form between a sword, an axe, and a serrated mass of screaming metal, because the demon inside does not want to be held and makes its displeasure visible. The axe of blind fury, associated with Khorne Berserker champions, contains a Khornate demon that overwhelms the wielder's mind with rage, producing strikes of incredible speed and power at the cost of the wielder's ability to distinguish between friend and enemy. The Black Mace, the Bliss Giver, the Plague Scythe. Each chaos. God produces demon weapons that reflect their nature. Demon weapons are the most dangerous weapons a Chaos champion can carry because the weapon is always trying to kill its wielder. The demon inside resents its imprisonment. It pushes against the champion's will. It waits for a moment of weakness. A champion who loses the contest of will does not drop the weapon. The weapon drops the champion. The demon seizes control, turning the warrior's body into a puppet that swings the blade until there is nothing left to swing it at. Exterminatus weapons. When the Imperium cannot save a world, it kills it. Exterminatus is the order to render a planet permanently uninhabitable, and the weapons used to carry it out represent the absolute ceiling of destructive capability the franchise has ever depicted below the god tier. Cyclonic torpedoes are the most commonly depicted method, massive warheads fired from orbital bombardment platforms that detonate in the planet's crust, and trigger a chain reaction through the mantle, producing volcanic eruptions, tectonic collapse, and atmospheric ignition that renders the world a molten ball of rock within hours. Virus bombs are the biological variant, warheads containing the life-eater virus, a horrifyingly efficient pathogen that destroys all organic matter on a planet's surface in minutes. The virus kills everything: plants, animals, people, microorganisms, and the rapid decomposition of billions of tons of organic material produces a methane plume so dense that a single spark ignites the entire atmosphere. The planet's surface is scoured clean by fire that reaches from pole to pole. Two-stage cyclonic torpedoes combine kinetic penetration with fusion detonation, boring into the planet's core and detonating with enough force to crack the world apart. The Imperium reserves Exterminatus for situations where the alternative is worse: Tyranid infestation that cannot be cleared, chaos corruption that has penetrated too deeply to purge, orc infestations that have seeded the planet's soil with spores too thoroughly to eradicate. The decision to execute Exterminatus falls to Inquisitors, Chapter Masters, and in rare cases, Fleet Admirals with the authority to make the call. The weapons are not rare. The authorization is: the Imperium possesses enough cyclonic torpedoes to kill every inhabited world in a segmentum. The fact that it chooses when to use them rather than firing indiscriminately is the closest the franchise comes to depicting Imperial restraint. And the fact that the restraint is measured in the number of planets killed rather than the number of planets saved is the franchise's most succinct summary of what the 41st Millennium actually is.